Worldwide markets this week, Alphabet gets a gentle slap on the wrist and runs to all-time highs. China picking up the US slack in Africa. Jobs data out of the US, rate cut surely next week. AltVest going more all-in on crypto. OPEC does production increases for October. ASML reported to be putting $1.5 billion into French Mistral. I'm Simon Brown. This is Worldwide Markets, episode 647 for 9 September. I'm recording Monday at lunchtime. I'm also recording a day earlier because I'm at the Leaderex all Tuesday. If you're there, come and say hi. Worldwide Markets, powered by Standard Bank, Global Markets, Retail, and Shyft, the global money app that puts travel, shopping, payments, and investments in the palm of your hand. Enjoy the cheapest forex rates anytime, anywhere. Shyft, powered by Standard Bank. Thanks to Standard Bank and thanks to Shyft. Let's kick off with that jobs data that came out on Friday. It was a mixed bag. 22,000 jobs created, but 31,000 in health. So if you take health and healthcare out, it went backwards. June actually had a negative number in its entirety after revisions, bit of upward revision for July. It was one of those ones where you could, depending on the side of the fence, you could be glass half full or half empty. The short answer is it was some weakening. Now, unemployment only went to 4.3%. But other than that, I would say that this was a jobs report which under any other circumstance would likely see the Federal Reserve cutting rates. They, of course, have their next rate cut meeting on Wednesday, 17th. That's next week. And everyone expects them to cut 0.25%, particularly post Jackson Hole, where Jerome Powell, Fed chair, said, you know what, we're going to worry less about inflation. We're going to worry more about jobs. And they were obviously seeing some data. Of course, this Wednesday, we've got another inflation report. Let's see how that pans out. They might find themselves between a rock and a hard place. Short answer, rate cut for the US next Thursday. We have our own MPC on Thursday. Are we going to get a rate cut? I don't think so. I think not. I think that they're going to pause for now, particularly since they are anchoring inflation at that 3%. And the last inflation print, well, that went to 3.5%. Let's touch on Alphabet. They've had some troubles with court cases in America, basically anti-competitive. There are two. One has now been, both have been concluded. The one under Judge Mehta came with their proposed punishments. This was where they had claim was they had a monopoly in search, and they were found guilty of that. And I don't think anyone disputes that they do. Although the judge did say, you know what, this case is now, some 2-3 years old. And truthfully, AI's changed the game a whole bunch. I don't use Google so much. I don't know about you. I'm mostly using Perplexity these days, even ChatGPT. I use a bit of Google. But if you'd gone 5 years ago, I'd been all in Google for the previous 2 decades. I had been a 20-year Googler when looking for stuff. And now I would say maybe 1 in 5 searches go via Google. So things have changed. The remedies were minute. There was worries around having to spin out Chrome or Android. That didn't make any sense. They also pay money to be default search. Apple gets $20 billion a year from them. That has been allowed to stay in place. I think because Firefox gets $750 million from Google to be default search. And without that, there would be no Firefox at all. So they have to give some data a one-off in terms of their search indexing database to sort of some preferred partners, oversight for 6 years. Nothing thrilling. And short answer is Alphabet ran to all-time highs. And that's not surprising. I've been saying that I like it. I also now hold it. It certainly has been. It was one of those weird ones. It was sitting on a PE of about 17, whereas the market as a whole was on 23. And I'm like, no, come on, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So Google really strong, up at 235. And I don't think it is yet necessarily very expensive. It does have sitting on, it's now on a historic PE of 25 and a forward of 23 and some change. So yeah, okay. No longer the very, very cheap it was before that. If we look at the mean PE, it's still 30. So still nicely below the mean PE. They've got one more case coming as well. This is again, they've lost the case. It's up to deciding on punishments. And that is around their abuse in the advertising business. They basically operate on both ends and in the middle, and that has been found to be anti-competitive. I think we're expecting the remedy in the next month or two in that regard. Again, maybe there's a story of breakup. Maybe they've got to spin out DoubleClick. Maybe they've got to spin out YouTube. I don't think any of those are bad for Google. I think they're probably value enhancing. I think that the likes of YouTube kind of sits within Google and we don't fully appreciate its value. So we'll wait and see what happens in that regard. But in this case, it really was a non-case. It was, as they say, as the kids will say, a nothing burger, an absolute nothing burger, nothing of any note anywhere. We've got two events coming up. The first one is next Thursday, 18 September, Mishima Gama Advanced Charting for both traders and investors. She did an intro one for us a year ago, and now we're coming back with more advanced. And then 16 October, I'll be presenting Warren Buffett has retired after 60 years at Berkshire Hathaway. He is stepping down at the end of the year. Investing principles for a lifetime. He started life as a value trader, as a classic value trader, investor, Benjamin Graham style. He moved more to the Ken Fisher growth at reasonable price. We'll discuss that shift in strategy. We'll discuss how we can implement Buffett's theories, ideas, rules into our trading. JustOneLap.com/events for booking and more information. So AltVest, which some of you might know on the JSE, is sent out an announcement today that they are wanting to be a Bitcoin treasury company. The big one in that regard, of course, is MicroStrategy, now just called Strategy, and they've got a market cap in excess of the Bitcoin on their balance sheet. That confuses me. And AltVest did buy themselves their first Bitcoin earlier this year as they sort of pivot to becoming a Bitcoin treasury company. They're now going to be changing their name to African Bitcoin Corporation and essentially the memorandum of incorporation. Mark Ashton made a good point on Twitter. They can do this. I mean, surely they need shareholder approval, and they haven't mentioned anything about that. Anyway, the new company, African Bitcoin Corporation, ABC, will focus on the Bitcoin. What they're doing at this point in time, they're looking to raise 11 million rand. That is a million new shares at 11 rand per share. If you are interested, you need to contact your broker. The current share price is around under 5 rand. But net asset value is a little over 11, and you wouldn't get liquidity. So they're going to take that 11 million. Some of it will go towards the name change costs. The rest will go towards buying Bitcoin. And ultimately, they plan to raise some 210 million in tranches and ultimately $210 million. Although maybe there were some typos in the values. But nonetheless, they are absolutely doubling down on this. I did a podcast, you can go find it on the channel, on Bitcoin treasury companies. I'm not sure. If Standard Bank wanted some Bitcoin, they could go and buy some Bitcoin. They can't use it for their capital adequacy ratio. It's just too volatile. What happens one day when Bitcoin halves and Standard Bank's no longer it doesn't have adequate capital? Then they're bankrupt. Then they're in huge trouble. They, maybe some at the edges. But anyway, there's a lot happening here. Folks are excited. We shall see how that rolls in time. But AltVest going all in and changing their name as well. Oil. So OPEC Plus met again in the weekend. And notwithstanding oil prices, they decided to increase production, although a little under 200,000 barrels, which is not a heck of a lot. And in previous times, they've done much bigger increases, to be clear around that. But this is Saudi Arabia trying to get market share and squeeze everyone else out. The $70 level is important. Back at the beginning of August, it breached that, but it's been going weaker. It's now at lowest levels since, early June. And I think we're going to see $60 oil. I mean, I really do. I don't see why we wouldn't see $60 oil with more supply coming on and slightly weaker global GDP expected for 2025. Oil surely going lower. And then the question is, what happens then to Sasol? Look, Sasol's on a tear. I say that we can get to 135, 140. I'm holding. That's what I'm looking out for. It's looking quite good at this point in time, but I will start taking profits in the high 130s. That for me will be plenty. I will be out. Thank you very much. Interesting story came across my timeline today. It is unconfirmed. It is rumors. ASML, that is the Dutch company that makes the UV lithographic machines that make the really, really fancy silicon chips. Think 2 nanometer, 3 nanometer, and the like. They are the only people who make it around the world. Their sales are a bit lumpy, sometimes booming, sometimes less. So you've got ASML on the one side, they're Dutch, listed in the US. Then you've got Minstrel, which is a French competitor to ChatGPT, OpenAI, and the like. It's basically a large language model, except it's a French large language model. Weirdly, you can ask it to speak in English, and yeah, anyway. So the Minstrel, no one's heard of it much outside of France, and I don't think anyone's used it much outside of France. And they're doing a $2 billion capital raise, and ASML is going to put $1.5 billion into it. I'm not sure about this. And they get a board seat. They do get a board seat, but I'm not sure. I am a ASML shareholder, and now are they propping up their customers? Not directly, right? Minstrel does not buy these products from ASML. ASML sells their fancy machines to the like of Taiwan manufacturing semiconductor company, and they then make the chips that then Minstrel will buy and will go into the various different data farms and the like. So there certainly is a story there. I'm just not convinced. I should go and check. Let's see what sort of cash holdings ASML have. They're probably quite very cash flush. I'd be surprised if they weren't. But it's kind of getting involved in your customers, even if indirectly. Cash and investments of $8.5 billion. Okay, they've got a ton of money. They can absolutely, totally afford that. But I worry about the blurring of lines. More than anything, I look at that and I think to myself, not so convinced. I like the ASML story. I've held it for a while. I plan to hold it for a while longer. I don't think it's going anywhere. Their tech is light years ahead of everyone else at this point. And it's been under a bit of pressure, although it had a fairly good week last week. Really? They want to own an LLM? I mean, they're picking winners here, and I don't think anyone actually knows who the winners are going to be. So I think maybe a little bit messy at that point. Fun fact, as I'm recording this, early afternoon on Monday, top 40, 500 points off all-time highs. The last 2 weeks, everyone's been telling me, this market's going to crash, we must buy, go short, etc., etc. This is a bull market until it's not. And right now, it is still very much a bull market. And importantly, it is acting like a bull market. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's making new all-time highs. And if we get a bit of follow-through, we will have another all-time high later this week. And we might even get to 100,000 points in the top 40 later this month. Currently 95,000. The high is around 95,500. Don't stand in the way of a bull market. One day, it'll be time for the bears. That is not the time just yet. Gold, we touched on gold last week, and the story there was that it had made a new all-time high, and importantly, it was breaking higher. The question is always, would it sustain that high? And the answer is yes. We've got another good weekly close from it, and in fact, it has moved still yet higher. We might get a bit of a pullback to around the 34.50 level, but for now, gold looking really good. And let's have a quick look at platinum. Platinum perhaps being a little less. Both platinum and palladium, I mean, their break was real and significant. They held it. They had a bit of a pullback, but the break was 1,100 on platinum. The pullback was to a little under 1,300. It's now run again. It was looking really strong at one point last week and then kind of faded a bit. But it is, I mean, make no mistake, platinum's looking good. Palladium as well. Palladium came back to that support level at around about the 1,100. That has held. Platinum is probably the better of the two in terms of the expected shortages last year, this year, and next. Palladium, we don't know what the stockpiles are sitting in Russia. By accounts, it would look like they are fading out. Short answers, they've both held, so we can't argue against that. And people loved the fact that I looked at silver last week. So let me have a look at silver again. Silver is not something I'm typically looking at. What's my investment in silver? I've got some silver cutlery. It stayed above $40. Can't argue with that either. And then ZAR, that's a very royal we are through there. I am expecting the rand to move still stronger. If we're looking at rate cuts in the US, a weakening economy, I think that probably bodes well for the rand. It is currently 17.55. The low that we have seen this year is down at 43. 1743 back towards the end of August. I think we can expect those levels to be taken out. I think we're going to get back to 17 on the currency probably this year. I don't see any reason why not in that regard. Interesting story I read in currencynews.co, and I quote the key line: continent's trade with China has jumped 25%, that continent being Africa, to 222 billion so far this year, balancing out a decline in trade with the US as that country cedes influence in Africa. No one is surprised. We're just basically getting the confirmation that what they spoke about in terms of if the US exit, someone's going to take that void, and that void is being picked up by China. And the data now says it absolutely is being picked up by China. And then last point, Friday, Trump gave an executive order exempting graphite, tungsten, uranium, gold bullion, and gold bars, and some other metals from their country-based tariffs. There's been some confusion around that. That's useful. We have uranium, we obviously have gold, we have tungsten. Those will now be exempt from the Trump tariffs. So the 30% that we currently have will no longer be applicable. And that is good news. There is absolutely less on the tariff world, the better. Worldwide markets, powered by Standard Bank, Global Markets, Retail, and Shyft, the global money app that puts travel, shopping, payments, and investments in the palm of your hand. Enjoy the cheapest Forex rates anytime, anywhere. Shyft, powered by Standard Bank. We'll leave it there for this week. Thanks to Standard Bank. Thanks to Shyft. I know we were a day early. Normal days will resume next week. It will be back to normal as per next week. The week after, I'm away, but I'm going to do a timeless one on Second Brain and the like. So there will be something in the feed. It just won't be market orientated. If you're at Leaderex on Tuesday, come and say how's it. And come along next week to our event with Mishima Gama, Advanced Technical Analysis. Until then, my name is Simon. We'll chat again next week. Look after yourself, and if you can, look after somebody else as well.